Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, a place where dreams take flight, with authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives and meaningful conversations, where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover world-class education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our channel, USA Global TV. Download our app, USA Global TV. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. Thanks to our founder and executive producer, Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Music score by Yeffy Tang from Cloud Road Music. Voiceover artist Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. USA Global TV and Radio. Your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Well, it's morning where I'm at, so hopefully it is a good morning where you're at or a good afternoon. I am Dr. Danielle Lord, hostess of the Compassion Project, where we examine, explore, and unpack institutional trauma. I think the realization of understanding how trauma is really a part of every part of our society is very important to consider as we think about how it impacts us at the individual level and at the global level and how we interact with others. So our goal in this show is to really examine how trauma is a part of our life, how it's a part of almost everything that we do, whether it's from work, our interactions with big business. And with that, we hope to unpack it, explore it, examine it, and get people to understand that it's a real thing so that we can ignite what I call a compassion evolution. And that is the opportunity for us to understand how it impacts us so that we can take care of ourselves and then begin to take care of others. So today I'm very excited to welcome back Seamus Corey, coming all the way from Scotland. If you're in Scotland today, I'm not sure, Seamus, but somewhere across the big drink there over on in Western Europe. And Seamus is the Chief Wellness Officer, and he works with organizations to promote compassion, kindness, empathy, and wellness within our organizations, big and small. So welcome, Seamus. Welcome back.
Thanks, Daniel. Great to be here, and fantastic to be back on your show. I think I had such an impact the last time. I couldn't wait to come back on to continue our discussion. So it's great to be here, and thanks for having me.
Oh, always. Yeah, the conversations are always so rich and impactful. So very happy to have you back with us today. And I think today we're going to be talking about resiliency and grit.
Yeah. It's been a subject that is certainly close to my heart, and in terms of the work that I do, and certainly a lot of the work around wellness and wellness consultancy that I apply to clients and individuals has a real I suppose a real connection to resilience, and it's how we maintain our resilience, how we become aware of our resilience, and how we grow our resilience that makes the difference in terms of our wellness journey. So it's something that I'm very passionate about.
Yeah, it's the internal monologue I was having last night at 2 a.m., which is kind of my normal wake up time for me to have my internal monologue. I was thinking about, resiliency and grit and preparing for our conversation today. And I was thinking it's kind of ironic that, this is a show about recognizing trauma so that we can all begin to recover from this trauma through self-care. But we don't have resiliency and grit without a little stress and trauma ourselves. And I think there's a lot of irony in that whole statement. And it just shows the complexity of our whole world, and that we're just one small part of it. So with that, I wanted to share a story, if you give me just a second here.
Yeah.
And it illustrates this exact same thing. And in fact, you might you might have some thoughts around this, Seamus. This is a story from my book called Focused Moments. And it actually was a book that I produced, I can't say I authored the book because the stories came from other sources, But the whole idea of the book came from my time in a Catholic institution. And so for 13 years, I worked in a very large Catholic organization. And the sisters who had been running Providence for 150 years, actually, Providence as a health system predated statehood. And it was started by 5 sisters who came from Montreal. And they were transitioning the operations of the health system to the lay people. So for those non-Catholic folks, and Seamus can correct me if I go astray here, they were transitioning it from kind of the church to non-religious or non-Catholic folks. And so that was a huge deal for them, because they really wanted to make sure that some of these institutional practices that had made Providence a compassionate organization and kindness and caring were continued through that transition and well beyond. So the idea of reflections came about in 2004, and it was from a practice amongst the priesthood where they were transitioning from one situation to another, and they would touch the door frame as a way to create a physical reminder that they needed to leave something behind in order to be fully present in the moment.
Love that.
And so they are the sisters. It wasn't a we thing. It was the sisters who started this practice of what was called a reflection. And so it became so meaningful to me as part of my own developing my own sense of presence, which I think is also a real resilience piece around this, and that I carried it forward now into my business, and I call them moments. And so as I was preparing for an event with a big team on Monday, I was looking at a particular story, and it made me think about this whole topic of resilience. So the story is that the biosphere, the second biosphere that was started in Arizona, I think in 1999, which was this geodesic dome in Arizona, where they were trying to create the perfect environment for plants and animals and life to flourish off of Earth, actually. But everything within the dome was flourishing and growing, and the trees were growing at a remarkably fast rate, but they would die. They would get to a certain point, certain height, certain degree of foliage, and then the trees would die. And so they couldn't figure out, the scientists couldn't figure out what was happening. The soil was good, the nutrients were good. So they started consulting with other botanists and naturalists, and they realized that it was the lack of wind.
Wow.
It was the lack of wind that was not allowing for the trees to create something called stress wood, which was the wood that was the toughness that was able to sustain them through times of trauma, tragedy, events, windstorms, hail, whatever was occurring in nature. That was the very thing that was necessary in order for them to sustain life. And it made me think about our conversation today around resilience and grit. So I'll pause for a minute because I've kind of monopolized the first whole 10 minutes here. You're my guest.
Not at all. Not at all. I love that. I love that story, and I think in all our lives we all need a degree of stress. We all need a degree of stress in our lives. When we bend too much, though, it becomes really painful, and we need to recover from that. So it's about for me, it's about balance. It's about it's about we won't live the perfect lives. We will experience stresses in our lives, and I love that whole model and that whole image of the trees didn't grow because they didn't feel the wind. And I think we all need to feel the wind. I think we all need to feel centered, but a certain degree of stress is important in our lives, to the point that it doesn't break us, that it just makes us stronger and helps us to grow. And that's the balance that we try to achieve. If too much happens, if we become overwhelmed, if we become too stressed, then we burn out. So the question is, how do we maintain that balance? How do we maintain the wind of balance in our own lives in order to achieve the lives that we want? That's the challenge that faces us, and that's the challenge that I faced and continue to face in my own life. as I surround myself on a daily basis with competing demands, internal demands and external demands. And, we live in a world of, competing demands at the moment. And, our world is so fluid and so flexible and so changeable that I think we need to develop that sense of that stress would in our lives to enable us to be able to withstand the pressures that we face on a daily basis, Danielle.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think back to raising my own kids, right? And thinking I tried to give them the best life possible, but did I allow for any of that stress would to develop?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And I think we see this, they talk about 4 generations, right? Is that the by the time a family or a society gets to a 4th generation, we've done that so many times that we've enabled too much safety and security for the kids, and the kids don't develop that own stress wood in their own lives. And so we've seen it repeated time after time within history. But how do you, go ahead, please. I'll let you respond to that.
Yeah, it's interesting when I look at my own childhood growing up, and when I look at pretty much it was up in the morning, have breakfast, and then out the door during summer holidays. And we'll be coming up to summer holidays, and you didn't come back in the house until the sun went down. Right? It was as simple as that. That was my childhood. So
Yes.
we ran in the fields, we went in and out of each other's houses, we built huts. We explored, we went fishing, yeah, all that kind of stuff, right? I appreciate. The world is much more dangerous, different place now, and there is a
Yes.
degree of safety, but there's also a degree of, I think, calculated risk we need to expose ourselves to in order to get outside our comfort zone, in order to learn those lessons of what it really means to develop that stress wood of resilience and grit in our own lives. But it's the challenge is, how do we find it? And when we find it, how do we maintain it? And how do we know when we have opted for the comfort rather than the challenge that life presents?
That's a great reflective question. How do we balance the two? But how do we step back and ask ourselves the question, was I too easy on myself?
Yeah.
I think too, the other piece to that is we tend to, I think as humans, I'm struggling with the right word here, but we tend to overlay our own experiences onto other people. And I know there's a better word for that. But I'm not experiencing stress, so therefore you shouldn't be experiencing stress either, right?
Yeah.
We don't step back and think about the person as a whole person and a unique person, and to say, gee, my stress might not be your stress. Your experience is a very different experience. And that's the whole reason I named my business Archetype, is because we are such unique individuals, right? There's still a lot of similarities around us. We all stand tall and have hair and physical resemblances, but innately we are very different humans. And I think oftentimes I see, well, gee, that shouldn't stress you or that shouldn't bother you. And in fact, it very well could be bothering somebody else. But we do, I think, tend to overlay or transfer, I think is the right word, our own experience to somebody else and just think, well, I just don't see why you're stressed about this.
Yeah, and you're right. And, you multiply that in a close working environment within an organization, and, it becomes, it becomes a point where, if one person is stressed in an organization, then everybody else is expected to be stressed if that stress is coming from the leadership, right? So if leadership come out this morning, why are you so relaxed? You can't be that relaxed. You need to, you work, pressure, and in order to perform better. That has the opposite effect. So rather than enabling people to work better, smarter, harder, and perform better, it actually demotivates somebody to the point that, their own stress wood is bent too much.
That is an amazing point. And I have myself experienced that. Well, the upper leadership is stressed, so everybody else better snap to it and start working harder. That is a great point. I saw that in healthcare a lot of times when, you working in a hospital and everyone would say, well, we do really serious work here, so we can't be having any fun. It's like, but we're humans. But yes, we do serious work, we do hard work. But that's the very point of being able to grow our resilience and be able to flex a little bit, is to be able to laugh it off and have a little bit of fun. So I've definitely experienced that in healthcare. Great point.
Absolutely. It is, and it's how we manage that. I spoke to an organization only yesterday where the whole issue was that level of toxic stress that was in an organization, and how do we stick a pin in the balloon of that and let the air out of that so people can breathe a little bit more, people can reflect a little bit more, and people can identify, as you've already said, Daniel, that somebody else's stress should not be taken on by them, and they should be able to work on putting up really strong boundaries that make all the difference in that.
Yes, and then having people respect those boundaries that you're putting up as well.
Absolutely. And that needs to be communicated throughout the organization that this now is the culture, and that's what I'm going to be working with the organization with going forward, to begin to build that culture of understanding and reflection, and that it's okay not to be okay, and if you're not okay, there's help and support available, that you don't have to burden others with the load that you're experiencing.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Yeah. And, we talk so much about work-life balance. And I think that not having to burden others with your own stress, or not having to feel burdened by the stress of others, is really a part of that work-life balance that actually never really comes up. So I love that idea of you are your own unique individual, and you're having a unique individual experience, and that's okay. Honor that, and to have your own unique individual experience.
But quite rightly prefer not to share that experience with others. And what should be put in place is, look, if the as you've already mentioned in terms of the biosphere, if the earth is good, if the nutrients are good, if the elements are right, then it requires a kind of joined up approach to supporting somebody who's maybe overstressed, whose wood is bent too much over, to bring them back into balance, so that they're able to feel that same small degree of stress, but not to the extent that they're disabled or incapable of doing their jobs.
Then it's going to break them.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you see resiliency and grit? Do you see those as two different things? Do you see them as kind of one and the same? Or what's your take on the idea of resiliency versus grit?
Yeah, I think we have a choice to make, and it comes down to choice at all times in terms of every situation that we're faced with. And in terms of my own story, I faced some degree of situations in my own life, and I had the choice to make there. I could easily have given up and thrown in the towel, or I was determined to make a go of it and get stuck in and root my feet firmly in the ground and move forward. That didn't happen on its own, and that happened with support and help, and in some cases treatment and encouragement and reflection, and having a team of people around me who supported me. So resilience doesn't exist on its own, and I think when it comes to grit, you firstly need to be able to build your team. You need that team of people. You can't do it on your own. Even the highest climber who climbs Mount Everest and succeeds has behind him a team of people who are helping to achieve that. So if a climber has a team behind him to help him achieve the objective of climbing Everest, surely we are required as well to have a team behind us of supporters, of motivators, of people who are in our corner, who will be honest, transparent, and authentic with us, but who will push us gently to help us to achieve our outcomes. And I think that's what develops good grit and determination. Resilience then is that ability to be able to stretch and weave when life presents us various problems. But if you've got that team behind you, you'll be able to flex and weave a whole lot more easily. And if you haven't, then it's going to be a much more difficult process.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. The comparison to Mount Everest, and they certainly do have a team of folks who are behind them. Yeah, and I think we somehow get in this space of, well, I'm an adult, I should be able to figure it out on my own. I shouldn't have to be burdening other people with all of this. But you're so right; it is a team that's needed. It's a community, yeah, in order to help you through a challenging situation. So. Interesting comparisons when we talk about resiliency and grit. And so you have a different spin, which is really I loved hearing that. And so I always thought for a long time that they were kind of one and the same. And I've come to the conclusion now that no, they're two very different things. Yeah. And yeah. I see it a little bit opposite. And I don't know that, this is a challenge we need to solve, but I think it certainly is worthy of discussion further. So I kind of see resiliency as an innate trait that we have. If you look at small children, and even sometimes babies have survived some pretty awful situations. We watch mama dogs and mama bears and mama cats, be very resilient in terms of protecting their babies. And we even look at plants that are growing in some of the most obscure places and think, wow, that's a pretty resilient seed pod from that batch of seeds, right? So, but I think, resilience is one of those things that I always thought is innate, but can be either nurtured or damaged and destroyed. So we either continue to develop that resilience, and then at what point does all of those stressors then and all of that resilience build into the grit that we get? So a little different twist, but still one and the same, but still both so necessary and yet very different.
Absolutely. I think there's different steps on the same journey, depending how you approach that journey will make the difference in terms of how you live your life. But I think you definitely need both. I think more so today than ever. More so today than ever, because we live in a world today that sadly it's so strife-ridden and so polarized and so black and white that we are encouraged, I think, and certainly in terms of the work that I do, I encourage people to seek the truth in their own situation and not just rely on messages that they're receiving or attitudes that are being exploited on social media, and rather seek the truth for themselves, seek the honest path for themselves. And when they see that, they build that capacity then to almost fix into their destination, their roadmap of life, those two elements of resilience and grit that will help them to overcome those things that they face on a daily basis.
Yes. Yeah. But I loved your analogy of the tree, even with its strusswood, has to have a little bit of resilience so you can bend and sway. I love that. I think that's
yeah. Because if you don't, Danielle, the tree's going to snap and break, right?
Exactly. And I was thinking similarly, if we have too much grit, right? We've all run across that hardened individual who has got so much grit that you can't break through, right? So if we have too much stresswood, we can't bend or sway at all, and we're just going to topple over eventually.
Completely.
So interesting connection though too is, if we have too much grit and we can't bend, how can we be compassionate to others? How can we be compassionate to ourselves, and how can we be compassionate to others? Can we break through that?
And I think it comes down to the reality of being connected to ourselves and being aware of what's in our own lives. And I suppose working on that accordingly You know, and I suppose it comes down to awareness of who we are, and sometimes it may even mean that you know, we find that awareness from somebody else who might tell us. We might be so close to ourselves that we can't see it in ourselves, that it might require us to be able to do that.
Yeah, well, that's certainly true in leadership, isn't it? We have to bring those things to light so that leaders understand the impact that they're having through their own blind spots. I find that frequently, that leaders are just not open to examining some of those blind spots. So we talked a little bit about this idea within organizations right now where there's this I'm feeling stressed, so everybody must feel stressed as well. So in your role, Chief Wellness Officer, and you work with a lot of organizations helping to create a culture where people can thrive and be their best. So we do similar work, but what are you seeing right now? What's standing out for you, or trends that you're seeing?
I think that, you know, I think as people return to the office and as people return to working back in the office after a period of being at home, working at home,
yes,
I think the challenge comes for individuals to rebuild, obviously, in terms of teams, and rebuild in terms of a group, an organization. Where what I'm seeing is that people who return to the office are a little bit more worn out, a little bit more stressed, a little bit less resilient, because they've been working in isolation for that long time. It's like those astronauts who have come back after a 9-month stint on the International Space Station, who were only initially supposed to be there for you know, 9 days or something.
Very similar, isn't it?
It is very similar. So they need to rebuild their strength. And in the same way, employees who come back to the office after being, you know, at home for a period of time will need to rebuild their awareness and strength and resilience and grit of being back in that environment again. And I think that's the biggest challenge that's facing organizations. And I know it's a huge challenge in the States right now, where, you know, there seems to be almost a promulgation that everybody has to return to office, you know, and that nobody can no longer work at home because it's considered unhealthy to do so. I don't know if you're finding the same, Danielle, but, you know, it's certainly the experience in the UK.
Yeah, there's a lot of similarity here as well in the States, with the expectation that people do return to the office at least more, if not 5 days a week, at least 1 or 2 extra days a week. I think the challenge that organizational leaders need to embrace, aside from the resilience of reconnecting with one another as humans, as individuals, is that we have, after 5 years, I think it's 4 years, we have developed new habits and new routines. And how do we help people ease back into that? Like, I don't think I could get out of the house before 9 o'clock if I had to at this point. You know, we've had people who have never had to put their kids in daycare. We've had people who have been able to have family meals for maybe the first time in many, many years. And now all of a sudden we're asking them to undo all of that and bookend their day with a stressful commute. Once again, I don't know what commuting is like in the UK, but here in Washington State, it's very, very bad. You know, it's sometimes 2 hours, you know, to just go 30 miles. So now we're not only asking people to come back in and reconnect with colleagues that maybe they've never met in person because they were hired virtually and worked virtually for a number of years. So there's that piece of it. But now I'm asking you to give up family time. And I'm asking you to get up an extra hour or maybe 2 hours earlier again. I'm asking you to put your kids in daycare. I'm asking you to now take a portion of your paycheck and put it somewhere else rather than maybe into your own bank account. So I think as we think about returning to work, those are some of the things that leaders are going to need to really think about.
Completely.
Asking people to do and reshift their lives entirely.
Completely. And that grit and that determination starts from the moment you leave the house in the morning, right? And if you have to travel that 30 miles, which will take you 2 hours to get to work, and do the same on the way back in terms of commute, you'll develop a good strong sense of grit and resilience from that one practice before you even get to the office.
That is
You'll be
so true.
exhausted by the time.
Yes.
Yeah, you'll be exhausted by the time you get to the office, and you still have to do a full day's work. You still have to do a full day's shift,
Yeah.
and I think more and more work, and certainly the focus for me in more and more work is that we don't take our finger off the pedal in terms of wellness. That it's even more important now,
Mm-hmm.
even
Mm-hmm.
even more so now, that we do develop and we do have onboarded in our organizations good strategic wellness programs that will allow people the stress that they need in order to
Mm-hmm.
flex appropriately, so that they're able to navigate this new journey that they're taking. They've done it before, but like you said, they've been out of the cycle for so long. It's like learning a whole new set of skills again,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and it's engaging with them at that level, having honest, authentic, real conversations, and putting real, honest supports in place to enable people to make that journey that they need to make. That in turn will develop their resilience, and that in turn will develop their grit and determination to overcome, if they have a good, strong strategy behind them to help and support them.
I love it. I love it. And that is the missing piece, I think. And I worry that we are going to have a lot of organizations who are going to overlook that need for that wellness strategy and just say, okay, starting Monday, everyone's back into the office.
Yeah,
And
yeah, and for some organizations, this has been as blunt as that. Right, I want you back in 9 a.m. Monday morning. It's a 9 to 5, back to normal. I want you fully producing. I want you fully productive. I want you fully performing. No
yeah,
excuses. I just want
yeah.
results, and that's that's the cold truth of where some organizations are at the moment. But people aren't on the same channel.
No,
They're
definitely
not
not.
on the same
Definitely not.
channel,
Yeah.
and what you're experiencing now in workplaces is that fear, is that anxiety, is that guilt, is that resentment, is that lack of motivation, is that lack of support, is that lack of listening skills on behalf of leadership in our organizations, that
Mm-hmm.
are 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 not so much ignoring that, but actually they're focusing on the bottom line to the detriment
Mm-hmm.
of people's wellness, resilience, and grit. And I think to do so would be, to do so is a mistake.
I completely agree with you. I hope at some point we move beyond this old, outdated system of it's all about the productivity and the task, right? I mean, we've been in this battle for 100 years. Literally, we have known
Yeah,
since the 1920s when the first studies came out in the Hawthorne series, the Hawthorne studies. We have known that it is so much more than just productivity and task and the bottom line. And yet
yeah.
we still are stuck in this crazy paradigm around this. So,
And
well,
the fuel to the fire, Danielle, is when you've got. I'm just going to say it. When you've got administrations and governments, instead of actually collaborating and getting around the table, will instead throw large amounts of taxes and large amounts of tariffs on both internal and external producers. Which puts further pressure on the bottom line in order to make up what's going to be lost in terms of additional taxation and additional tariffs. It's just a no-win scenario that nobody's going to really win from. I think it would be better to communicate, collaborate, rather than enter into this constant, level of competition that we're in. That will
mm,
really, as the Hawthorne study kind of pointed out 100 years ago, really gets us nowhere at the end of the day.
yes, it's the competition. I think that is the business mindset, right? But it's really is collaboration that's going to get
It
us
is
to a much
it's
better place.
collaboration and
Yeah,
communication, not internally as an organization, and externally to the clients and customers that organization works with.
yeah.
That's the dream. The reality, unfortunately, is completely different at the moment. And I'm no fool on that. I think we are going to be going through a really stressful time for some period up until those wellness strategies are in place for people.
Yes, I agree. Well, wow. This 40 minutes went way too fast, Seamus.
Completely. Every time it goes way too fast, Danielle.
It
Horrible.
I agree. In our remaining few minutes, Seamus, how can folks find you?
Yeah, well, you can check me out on my website, seamuscurry.co.uk. I am also available on LinkedIn by just searching for me, Seamus Curry. I'm on YouTube, Seamus Curry / PYP. I'm also on Spotify, and I'm also on Amazon as well. So I have a number of pots on the fire at the moment, Danielle, that I'm cooking. And, later on the year, I'm happy to report that I'm due to bring out my own book later on this year, and it'll be published by the amazing Phenom Publishing under Dana Sardano and Angela DeMarco, who are two wonderful individuals who have honoured me and honoured the space by accepting my book, and hopefully that will be on the shelves, available to purchase at an online retailer with you in the very near future.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations on the book. And if you haven't, for the listeners, Seamus was on the show last October, I think. So
it was October.
Check it out. It was October. Wow. Yeah. And really great conversation about the experience that you went through with your own trauma. And I think the defining moment for me was really realizing that if the institutions that we rely on for kindness, compassion, grace, and healing can do what they did to you, then we really are living in institutionalized trauma for certain. So
we are. It's difficult times, Danielle, difficult times, but hopeful times at the same time. There's always hope. And I hope that in my own witness, I'm an ambassador of hope.
You certainly are. And it was a pleasure to have you on the show again. Thank you so much for the really rich conversation on resiliency and grit. And I thank you for being with us today. Thanks to our producer, Dr. Jacqueline, and to USA Global TV and Radio. Just coming up next month. What's next month? April already. Oh my gosh, where's the year going? I have my friend Christopher Kodama, MD, who is transitioned from being a medical clinician to a medical leader. We are actively doing some research right now in the trauma associated with that. So hopefully we'll have a great conversation and maybe even some data to share with you as we explore that conversation. Stay tuned for a word from our sponsors, and thanks for being part of the conversation today. And be sure to take care of yourself so that you can take care of others. And thank you to Seamus. Bye, everyone.
USA Global TV and Radio proudly presents Steve Klein Art at steveklein.art.
My name is Steve Klein, born Manchester, England, 1953. My quest in my lifetime is to create artwork from my soul and the deepness within my wildest dreams and fantasies. In 2012, my heart stopped when I was given too much anesthetic for a minor knee operation, and this near-death experience took me to another multidimensional world, an out-of-body experience. And I was given the gift of being blessed by an overwhelming, burning passion to become, for the very first time in my life, an artist with an eternal, passionate desire to bring my art, which I've named multidimensional, subliminal, freeform art, to the world, as only 3% recover from what I experienced. And now in my golden years want to release my cosmic, vital energy through my art to allow people to be a part of my cosmic dance.
To learn more, email roccogoodwine@gmail.com. For VIP pricing, mention USA Global TV and Radio.
What if one simple skill could change the way you connect with the world? What if listening could open doors to deeper relationships, stronger businesses, and a better you? Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck, the Listening Mentor, brings you USA Global TV and Radio, a space where voices are heard, ideas are shared, and global communities thrive. Through the Elevated Listeners courses and books, you'll master the power of listening, set boundaries with confidence, and transform conversations into opportunities. Join us. Listen, learn, elevate. Whether you're a leader, a coach, a business owner, or someone seeking stronger connections, your journey starts today. Subscribe, learn, and transform today.
Thank you, viewers and listeners of USA Global TV and Radio, for joining us today. We're honoured to have your time and attention as part of our global community. At USA Global TV and Radio, we believe in the power of authentic conversations, meaningful connections, and creating a world of possibilities together. Want to be part of something bigger? Join our team of elevated listeners at usaglobaltv.com, a space where your voice matters and your ability to listen transforms relationships. Stay connected with us across all our platforms for thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and empowering stories. Subscribe to our channels at youtube.com/c/USA-Global-TV. Follow us on social media and explore the endless opportunities we're creating for growth, learning, and inspiration. Together, we're not just broadcasting, we're building bridges and changing lives one conversation at a time. For inquiries, contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com. Music by Johnny Dyes. Produced by Executive Producer and Director Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. Voiceover by Mike Porter. Creative Direction by Paul Garcia. All rights reserved. Copyright 2025. Visit usaglobaltv.com to view our full terms and conditions.